Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Press Play. I'm your host, JJ48, and tonight we are doing a bit of a special episode. Uh, Following our previous post game of Skyward Sword, given some time to think, I realized that there were a few things that we might want to address in a little more depth. So we're going to call this episode 200.5 and uh, go over a few things that we missed in Skyward Sword. Um, it's one of the downsides of uh, doing a lot of the post game analysis the way I do is that since I'm often doing it the same night that I finish a game, uh, I if I either haven't finished a game before or it's been a while, I sometimes don't really have time to prepare much of an in-depth analysis of the very end of the game. And having had a little bit of time to think since then, I realize like there's some things that we can discuss here. So um, it's been a little while since I filmed episode 200, so if I repeat some stuff or forget some of the things we went over, I apologize, but uh, most of this should be fairly new. So, okay, one of the first things, or one of the probably the biggest thing I wanted to take a look at was I noticed a little bit of a theme developing um, with Skyward Sword, and that is a theme of parting, as in saying goodbye to people and parting from them. Uh, one of one of the first ways we see this is with Impa. She was we met her as our guide on the surface. She was the very first person that we met, although we didn't know that her name was Impa at that time. We just met her as this old lady. She helps us in both the past and the present. Her younger self helping Zelda and taking her to the past, as well as giving Link the tasking Link with um, helping out here in the present. And then her older self helps Link, and surprisingly enough, Groose specifically. Um, she helps Groose come to terms with the fact that he's not the chosen hero, but uh, still, he's still able to help out. And he seems to grow rather attached to her and feels rather protective towards her, um, in addition to just generally wanting to be helpful and heroic. So she gives Groose a bit of purpose there. Um, then where the parting comes in, uh, we see after Zelda awakens, at the very end, we go through the end battle and then kind of come back where Impa. It's finally revealed that the old lady is Impa. I believe it was bracelet or hair tie. Um, some piece of jewelry gave it away to reveal to Zelda, and she stays just long enough to be able to say, "Yep, that was me," and it was good seeing you all again, and then uh, saying her final farewell, disappearing after. Honestly, she's been around for hundreds of years at this point. She's kind of earned a rest, but um, it does add it does add a bit of a goodbye on top of a what would otherwise be a rather celebratory moment. And in addition to Impa, we also have another example with Fee. Fee had been our companion throughout the game. You know, she first appeared to call to Link and lead him to where uh, she, as the sword, was resting. Um, and then at the end, when she's not going to disappear in presumably death, the same way that Impa did, but um, she does say like she's gonna be, she's gonna be going to sleep. Her job's done. She says she feels something close to happiness, which is rather uh, quite surprising given that uh, a she's played very robotically throughout the game as a construct that doesn't seem to have much uh, or any emotion, purely just going on calculation. So suddenly saying that she thinks she's feeling happiness or something close to it, uh, is rather surprising. Shows some growth from her and a connection to our characters. Assuming that she's meaning happiness for like being part of a job well done alongside of us, and not happiness that she finally gets to be rid of us, which uh, technically could be a way of reading that, but I choose not to read it that way. Um, and then after that, she disappears back into the sword, and she's going to be there, but she's now kind of in a sleeping or dormant state. She's no longer someone we can interact with. She's no longer really part of the group anymore. And so not only is this a little bit of a parting, and kind of a little bit of a sad goodbye on top of this and mid and Impa, on top of our victory. But with Fee specifically, because we've gotten to know her and she's in the Master Sword, it sort of recontextualizes our understanding of the Master Sword if we go and play other Zelda games. That now Master Sword is no longer an item. We can view it as more like, oh, this was our friend and companion from Skyward Sword, or it was the friend and companion of the Skyward Sword Link, since I don't think the Skyward Sword Link appears in any of the other Zelda games. They're all different links from him. But this got me thinking, since we started noticing this theme. It seems very prevalent in Skyward Sword. That kind of adds a little bit of it doesn't make it a sad ending per se. We're still a happy ending. We still defeated the boss. We restored peace to Hyrule. It's still a joyous occasion, but it does add just kind of a somber note to it. And that got me thinking, like, is this? I feel like we've seen that in previous Zelda games, so I would like to go through the entire series and just kind of look at how does this theme play into the ending of any of the other Zelda games? Does it play into it? Do we see themes of parting and separation, or is this something relatively recent? So let's jump all the way back to the beginning with the first two Zelda games, Zelda 1 and Zelda 2. And there's really not anything related to parting in these games. These are more just the classic fairy tale ending of, hey, you beat the bad guy, you rescued the princess, they lived happily ever after, presumably. So for these two specifically, there's not really anything to there's no hint of parting here. And I guess to clarify, when I'm talking about parting, I'm talking about specifically at the ending of the game, where we kind of see Link saying goodbye, or people saying goodbye and parting and separating. Not just assuming that, like, oh well, at some point in the future, people probably said goodbye. So, first two games, not really. The second two games, we had A Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo, and so this not only doesn't really have a parting or sad ending, it goes out of its way to make this probably one of the happiest endings in the series. We have here's the scene where, after we defeat Ganon, we go and Link gets the Triforce and says, "Now touch it with a wish in your heart." And after that, it goes into a montage showing everything happy and bright again in Hyrule. We see people who've been killed, restored to life. We see people who thought they were separated forever coming back together again, including even Link's uncle, who we saw get killed at the very beginning of the game. He's with Link again, and um, it's just a very happy occasion, like the very opposite, pretty much, of what we're looking at. So that one doesn't really fit. But then we come to Link's Awakening, and this one, for the first time in the series, this one hits us with the separation, and it hits hard with it. I chose the picture here of, at the end, Link sitting on a raft staring out at the ocean. As a reminder, because it has been a while, at the end, well, let's back up even further. About 2/3 of the way through Link's Awakening, we realize that we discover that the whole island of Koholint is a dream, and that if we succeed in waking up the Windfish, uh, it's his dream, so the island will disappear. Link's not going to disappear because even though he's in the dream, he's not actually a part of the dream. But the whole island, everybody in it, everybody that we've come to know, all the places that we visited, those all disappear. And so, even though we're burdened with this knowledge, we still, still have to go wake the Windfish. That's the right thing to do. That's the heroic thing to do. We can't just leave him sleeping, tormented by nightmares forever, just because we happen to be enjoying the dream. And we go wake the Windfish, and Windfish, when he finally meets Link, is like, "Oh, thank you, Link. Now let us awake together." And there we see a montage similar to Link to the Past, but very different in tone. Of we see numerous people that we've met throughout our journey, going about their business, and you see like Talon finding a mushroom. We see the old granny that I'm forgetting her name, sweeping. We see the animals in Animal Village, and as we see each of these scenes, they fade out and the whole screen fades to white. And then another screen fades out and fades to white, and we're just seeing everything disappear until eventually Link is just left alone. He wakes up amidst the wreckage of his ship that had been destroyed in the opening cutscene, and he realizes that everything he has experienced has been a dream. Looks up and sees the Windfish fly over. And so there, it's interesting. Link sees the Windfish, realizes that even though it was a dream, he gets kind of excited and happy when he sees the Windfish. So I interpret that as realizes that, oh, it was real even though it was a dream. I really was in a dream. It wasn't just my dream and I imagined all this happened. I really was in this place. And also probably feeling some sort of a connection to the Windfish, in that since it was his dream, meeting all of the people there kind of means that he met the Windfish in a way, and that those were all parts of his subconscious, with the exception of Marin, who we established was most likely a seagull, who was also caught in the dream. But that's my personal theory. Won't get into that too much here. But the main point is that we once again have this parting. First with the entire island and all the inhabitants that we've known. Partway through, we had to make the conscious decision that we were going to basically cause the destruction of the island. And then at the end, Link is kind of left to drift onto his next adventure, seeing the Windfish, happy that it's confirmed that it wasn't just his imagination, but still saying goodbye. The Windfish doesn't seem to be all that interested in hanging out with Link at that point, which will also become something of a theme in some of these endings. And so it's interesting that the Game Boy title that was the first one not to take place in Hyrule. I think it was the first one that wasn't developed by the main Zelda team. I think it was viewed more as more of a side project at the time. But they were the first ones that really went in this different direction with the ending. It's not the happy fairy tale, they all lived happily ever after ending. It's now a little bit more thoughtful and of a, hey, this is a victory, but it's a little bit somber. So let's move forward to the next games. If that brings us to the N64 era, where we have starting with Ocarina of Time. I wanted to highlight the picture of Mido and the Zora King Zora, because the context you might recall is at the end of the game, we everybody's celebrating the destruction of Ganondorf, or specifically Ganon, and I believe this would be in the adult timeline, because in the kid timeline, technically, Ganondorf is stopped before he ever does enough that people would really be celebrating too much about it. So this is in the adult timeline. Ganon is stopped. The Hyrule is saved. We see big celebration, everybody dancing. The sages are off on their own, and I think we touched upon it at the time. The implication seems to be that the sages, in Ocarina of Time at least, in order to do their sage duties, all of them ended up dying, and it's their spirits that went and assisted Link with his final battle with Ganondorf, helping open the seals. And part of the reason people think that, and that fits here, is Mido and King Zora. And specifically, we have, you think of their connection to the sages versus the other sages. Rauru, the Sage of Light, has presumably been dead for a long time. He's already in the Temple of Sages, at the Temple of Light, at when we first pick up the Master Sword. So he's presumed dead, but not really relevant to this. Then we have Darunia, the Sage of Fire. He's seems to be killed when he heads off to face Volvagia. But his people are still celebrating, because I mean he was the chieftain of the Gorons, but he was also a warrior, and going out saving his people, that's a good heroic death for a chieftain. A little bit sad, but that's something definitely worth celebrating. Similarly, Nabooru, second in command and leader of the Gerudo after many of them kind of turn away from Ganondorf. She's also very much a warrior, a fighter. So again, makes sense that her people would be celebrating even as they mourn. And the same with Impa, Sage. Nabooru was Sage of Spirit, I believe. Impa would be Sage of Shadow. Similar case in this version. Impa's like, I don't know if she's, I forget if she's the head of the Hylian Guard in this version, but she's definitely seems to command a lot of respect with the Hylian Guard. She's a warrior. She's Princess Zelda's bodyguard, and so once again, it's very much a fitting warrior's death for her. But then we have the last two, Princess Rudo, the Sage of Water, and Saria, the Sage of Forest, neither of them are warriors, and so it seems rather fitting that King Zora and Mido, as representatives of people close to Ruto and Saria, would be sitting off on their own and not celebrating. They're For them, the mourning is outweighing any joy and happiness they might feel. Um, in which, in Princess Ruto's case, yeah, she's a little bit strong-willed and might have a fighting spirit, but she's not trained as a warrior, and she's about the same age that Link is, so probably in her teens. Not really the type of person that you expect uh, to fall in battle and be be looking for a warrior's ending. And then Saria, being one of the Kokiri, uh, the Kokiri seem to be kind of eternally children, and they never seem to die of old age, and uh, seem to rarely have great violence fall upon them. So even less expected for one of them to be killed in action like this. And the fact that we focus on King Zora and Mido in the middle of this celebration, we see everybody celebrating, then we focus on these two, and then I believe it goes from there to seeing the sages gather together, watching from a distance, or the spirits of the sages. Um, Shows it's really highlighting the fact that, like, even among even among the victory, even among all the good things that have happened, we still have some sadness, we still have some loss, we're still saying goodbye to people, and having this separation that there's some things that won't be undone this time. And so, yeah, we're here, and unlike with Link's Awakening, here it's not just a parting of, like, uh, the dream is ending. It's no, there was real sacrifice here, um, that can't be replaced. Moving on, then we continue this in Majora's Mask. We have kind of the celebration here after we defeat Majora. Uh, First of all, there was the parting, um, where Link just. It, sorry, let me back up just a moment for uh, Ocarina of Time, because Majora's Mask starts due to a parting in Ocarina of Time. An additional parting in Ocarina of Time is that Navi the fairy leaves Link. Navi's like, "Hey, Link, it was great working with you, but my job here's done," and kind of just flies off on her own, leading to Majora's Mask, where young Link, being a little bit older, after a couple years have passed, um, decides he's going to set out presumably to look for Navi, and then ends up finding the Skull Kid instead, and uh, kicking off the whole adventure. And death and parting and separation is a constant theme throughout Majora's Mask. Uh, Pretty much everywhere we go, we see somebody has died. Uh, in, I guess with the Deku, the princess has been kidnapped. It's not necessarily a death, um, but certainly with the Gorons, with uh, Darmani has been killed, and we get his mask. That Oh, nope, there is one of the Deku, um, not one of the main ones, but of course we got the Deku mask from who is revealed in the end credits to be the Deku Butler's son. Um, the victim of the Skull Kid. We get the Goron mask from Darmani. We get the Zora mask from uh, Mikau, the guitar player of the Indigogos, um, and even yeah, and of course there's the whole game is the threat of the moon crushing everybody. We have the separation of Skull Kid from his friends, the Giants. They left him. He didn't know why. Um, the whole game has a lot of death and separation uh, and farewells. But then we get to the end. We defeat Majora. We're able to return the mask to the happy mask salesman to keep safe, and uh, people are gonna be able to have their party, which again Link does not seem to be invited to. They're telling him like, hey, we're gonna go enjoy our party. You go enjoy whatever it is you're doing instead, because you're certainly not coming back into town. Um, and during the ending credits, we see Link setting off. We do see the Indigogos playing, and they play somewhat of a somber song, kind of a reminder that actually I think Zora Link does actually sing with them or play with them. So they do get Mikau back in a little bit of a sense, at least for that song, but a reminder that they've lost somebody. We get to see the Deku Butler grieving as he finds his son. So we get that reminder, and overall there's a lot of reminders of people having lost loved ones, and the fact that even though this is a joyous occasion, the Skull Kid has been stopped, his mischief has been put an end to. Things are there's still sadness, and there's still grief and mourning and loss. And then of course Link is also parting and going away. He's traveling on his own again, even saying goodbye to the fairy companion Tattle, who had been joining him and kind of filling in Navi's role. He once again sets off, not having a fairy anymore. So we once again have victory and joy kind of mingled with some sadness and goodbyes and farewells. So then moving on to a couple more games. I decided to put the Oracle's games together as one game on the left here. And when I was going through our footage, I noticed this exact screenshot is actually used at the end of both games when we complete a combined game. So we've actually gone through and defeated Ganondorf and gotten the final ending. Both they'll do different ending cutscenes depending on whether we were in Oracle of Ages or Oracle of Seasons, but they both end with this scene of Link in a boat setting off, waving goodbye, and it's actually even the same silhouettes in both. Presumably that's why they're silhouettes, not clear images, and it's even the same castle in both, which is a little bit odd to me because I don't recall there being a castle in Oracle of Seasons. So maybe that's supposed to be the Temple of Seasons then in Oracle of Seasons, restored and brought back out of Subrosia. I could probably go with that. But there we do have somewhat of the of a return to the happier ending. We see lots of scenes of Link and the others having fun, their lives being restored, people that we've met meeting up with each other, and seeing some fun interactions between them. But then we leave on this parting shot of Link saying goodbye. And here we don't have the focus on death and that kind of a parting or separation, but we still have Link. We're focusing on the fact that Link's not here to stay. Link's moving on. Link's leaving. Um, he's not. He doesn't seem like overly broken up about it, and the people seem like they're pretty happy for him too. But it's still very much a focus on goodbye. Um, Similarly, I'm not. I wasn't really sure what to make of the next one with Four Swords. On the one hand, the game uh, doesn't have a huge amount of story, and um, we don't really have that kind of a parting. But I realize if we want to look at it a certain way, there still is a bit of a parting here in that when we return the Four Sword to seal Vadi and make sure that he stays sealed away, um, there is a separation that we have. These we had four links, and then three of them are going away. I mean, technically, they're all becoming one link again. They weren't four separate people; they were like four versions of Link. Um, but I view it as it's very similar to the Windfishes. Uh, the dream ending. Like technically, those are all dream people. We didn't. It's not real people dying or anything, but it's still we made these connections, uh, and now they're going away. With Four Swords, um, there's a little bit less of that in part, partially because we were just playing it single player, so we didn't even have four other people. The links were just copies doing whatever we wanted them to. Um, and in the game itself, they're not given any personalities or anything. They're just other colored links that are different colors, so we can tell them apart. Uh, if you have multiple players, you can tell who's who and who's where. But I do seem to recall there was a manga adaptation of Four Swords that um, actually gave each of the links like a different personality. Like its link splits into four, and then each one of them kind of has a different part of his personality, and and then they're all working together to accomplish things, and that's sometimes different personalities help them. Sometimes the different personalities get in their way, is like they don't necessarily want to do something that normal Link would have no problem doing. Um, and that is a manga adaptation. That's not the game. There's a lot more that kind of fleshed out and adapted in there. But it still makes me think that we can probably classify the four links going away and becoming one link again as something of a parting, at least. Um, Maybe a little more so when we get to the next one. So then, after Four Swords, we had Wind Waker, and recall after Wind Waker we have um, we defeated Ganon, or we defeated Ganondorf. The King of Red Lions has uh, has in his human king form, he wished on the Triforce for us to be able to that Hyrule would be drowned and that we'd be able to make it back to the surface. Um, and as we come up, our boat is just a boat again. It's no longer a talking boat. But at the very end, we set off with the pirates. Uh, Tetra now knows that she's Princess Zelda, and the long uh, descendant of the previous Princess Zelda and King of Hyrule. And so she and her pirate crew and Link are going to set off to look for basically a new Hyrule. And so let's say this is definitely a parting. Link is setting off with the pirates, saying goodbye to all the all the villagers on his island. Um, it's it's a little bit of an echo of at the beginning of the game when he first sets off on um, with the pirates to go rescue his sister. There, he's definitely very glum and down because he's leaving the island for the first time, and his sister's captured, and so he's worried about her. and so he's just kind of moping around on the deck. Here, he's kind of cheerily waving goodbye to everybody, from deck of his own boat alongside the pirate ship, and it seems like a much happier occasion. They're setting off on another adventure, but he's still saying goodbye to the island that has been his home, and to his sister and grandmother and all the people he's grown up with, and just kind of setting off onto an adventure. And excuse me. And so once again, we see it's actually starting to see a lot of these games ending with Link setting off on watercraft of some kind. That might be part of the theme, actually, at least in some of them. And mentioned before with four swords, doesn't take long for us to get to four sword adventures over here. And here once again, seems like mostly happy ending. We defeat Body, we defeat Ganondorf or Ganon, and rescue the maidens. But again, we have the four Links saying goodbye and becoming just one Link again. I think that still counts as a little bit of a parting. So moving on, we then have the Minish Cap, the third of the kind of four sword trilogy, even though I think it takes place earliest. And we have what was his name? Eslo, I believe. Who the Minish who had actually been our Cap for most of the game, saying goodbye, saying, "Oh, it's been a lot of fun, but we really need to part now." And he and Zelda, he was able to let Zelda use the magical hat that he had created to be able to fix everything. Then he's going to say goodbye, and here we have the scene where he's giving Link a green cap as kind of a thank you. And the fact that he had been the green hat for much of the game and is now giving Link a green hat seems to also be like a memento of like, hey, don't forget about me and the times we shared, which kind of adds a little bit of finality to it. That it seems like this is going to be a bit of at least a long goodbye, not just a okay, I'll see you tomorrow or anything. Then of course one of the major another one of the major emotional goodbyes was Midna in Twilight Princess. Fought alongside Midna. She initially skeptical of Link and Zelda and just fighting alongside him because, like, okay, we have mutual goals, so we'll help each other. Then she found out that they really care about her and she really care about them. And then we get this farewell where she's like, but light and dark can't, or light and shadow, they can't, they're not meant to be together. They're separate worlds. We've seen the when the Twilight Realm took over things, it would change people, it would terrify people, transform them, and then in the light world, the light could actually physically hurt Midna, and so the two worlds just aren't meant to actually be together. And so Midna leaves, and after she leaves, she actually the mirror breaks. She had damaged it before, ensuring that it would last just long enough for her to make it through, and then it shatters, permanently separating the light world and the Twilight. So we have a very permanent ending there Even though Midna's presumably still alive in her world, and uh, Link and Zelda are alive in Light World, there's now a permanent separation between them, even though they parted in friendship and will presumably never forget their times together. So that brings us to the two DS games that were sequels to Wind Waker, Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks. Phantom Hourglass was pretty simple, actually very similar to Link's Awakening, in that called Zelda initially, or Tetra initially tries to board the ghost ship. Link chases after her, finds that like Zelda's been turned to stone, and gets help from the Ocean King and the fairies, as well as from Linebeck, going and defeating Bellum. Bellum was the villain of that one. So they go and defeat Bellum, and then they come back to the pirate crew, and the pirate crew's like, you guys have only been gone for 10 minutes. So it's very similar to Link's Awakening in that it seems like most of it was some kind of a dream or some kind of mystical fairy space or something. But then as we're sailing away, we do see Linebeck's ship in the distance, sailing away from us, indicating that whatever it was very real, and we did make some real connections along the way. A little disappointing we don't actually see the Ocean King in his whale form flying across the sky like the Windfish, but it is what it is. Although interestingly here, we seem to be parting from Linebeck. He's going off in his own direction, but we know that the pirates and Tetra and Link eventually do find a new Hyrule, that becomes the Hyrule of Spirit Tracks, and there we met Linebeck the Third. So at some point, Linebeck must have either Linebeck or one of his descendants eventually made it to the new Hyrule. We're not sure if he ever met up with Link or Zelda again. Actually, probably mostly Link. He briefly met Tetra, Zelda at the end, but Link would probably be the main one he would be interested in meeting again. But we at least know that he or his descendants at least made it to New Hyrule. And speaking of which, then we have Spirit Tracks, which you might recall had 3 endings. There's the ending where Link is an engineer, and we can, Zelda is remembering her time with Link, and then she's working on apparently going over a bunch of papers or something. And then she hears the train whistle and goes out to wave at Link as he's going by. There's the ending where he decides he wants to be a soldier, and she goes to wave at him while he's training. And then there's, I can't remember what the third one was. I think the third one was just that he goes off on an adventure, and she doesn't know where he is or what he's doing, but she's thinking about him and remembering their adventures together. And so there, depending on which ending it is, there's degrees of separation. All of them do seem to have at least a little bit of separation, but at least the one where he joins the guard and becomes a soldier, it doesn't seem like he's really leaving, and he is kind of sticking nearby. Train one, there seems to be a little bit of a separation as he's going all around Hyrule, but he does seem to still be in the area. But we do still have a full parting with the adventure one, where just kind of I kind of hope Link's happy, Link's doing well. This is probably the least parting ending that we've had in a while. But I'd say in a way that actually makes a certain amount of sense, in that this is kind of the end of the Wind Waker trilogy, and this is the one that seems like having an end that doesn't have the parting makes it seem more final, as if like, okay, this is truly, after everything that's happened now, this timeline, this part of the timeline at least, can truly have a happy ending. I don't know if that was the intent, but it does mean that like I think it does make sense for this game in particular, if they were going to have one that had okay, we're actually want some real closure, and something that this game does seem like it would be a good one to do, just being the third of a trilogy and kind of bringing a close to the whole story. Again, there's the one ending that would seem to speak against that. That hey, there's still some continuation, but it's at least possible to have it both ways with these endings. And so some of the commonalities we can see with these is many of them, they're sad, but they're not tragic. Even the ones that involve people dying, that there's a little bit of a tragic element to it, but we still see that amid celebration and amid victory, that there's some focus on the sadness, but it's not meant to be like that is the only thing that we're concerned with. We're not supposed to view this as a bad ending. We're not supposed to see this as like Link failed, or that this is, that this was terrible. It's more of a thoughtful sadness of like, yes, we won, but there was a cost. So I'd say a bittersweet taste to it, and that mostly on the ones that involve death. The ones that are Link setting off on adventures, there's a little bit of sadness. He's saying goodbye to friends and probably won't see them again, but it's certainly not the same level of sadness as when some people have actually lost loved ones permanently and know that they're dead. So as I said, we have a victory celebration often with these, and that I do think is very intentional. That we want to make sure that the player understands that this is still a happy occasion. They did well. They defeated the bad guy. They brought peace to Hyrule. Whatever other emotions you may be feeling, the joy and happiness of having succeeded should be one of them. Many of them we saw show Link setting off on new adventures, so it's not just that things are parting. It's Link's going to keep moving, going to keep having adventures. He's not going to just settle down and enjoy the happy ending. He's going to keep moving. It actually puts me in mind of a line from The Lord of the Rings, I believe, at the end of the Return of the King, after Sauron's been defeated. Gandalf goes with the hobbits almost all the way back to the Shire, but then he decides he's going to turn away to go talk to Tom Bombadil, and he's like, yeah, after, now that Sauron's defeated, my role here is pretty much over. And I want to have a good long talk with Tom Bombadil. I haven't really had a chance to talk to him before because he is a moss gatherer and I have been a stone doomed to rolling. I think that's the line. He had been a stone doomed to rolling. Now that Sauron's done, he can finally stop rolling and meet the moss gatherer. And I feel like that kind of fits in with Link's role here, or Link, how they're treating Link, of like other people can stay and enjoy the happiness and enjoy celebration and everything, but Link needs to move on. Link needs to move on and have more adventures, because that's kind of his purpose. Um, one thing, but one thing I do note many of these, um, in many of these endings, is there's a sense of permanence, permanence specifically to the separation. Um, in death, obviously that's a permanence, or at least they're not coming back. You'll have to wait till death comes for you before you can meet them again. Um, you have we had Midna explicitly, breaking the mirror to and explicitly saying that, like, hey, light and dark, or light and shadow, uh, they're not meant to be together. We have this, uh, we have this emotional connection. We have, like, we're friends. We have this relationship, but our physical separation into our own worlds, it's better off if that's just a permanent break. Um, but then even the ones where Link's setting out, um, when at the end of Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons, he's setting out, that's not Hyrule. There's no sense that he's going to be coming back to those lands at any point. As far as he or anybody else there knows, um, this is their final goodbye. Like, they will likely never see each other again. And so it does seem rather important that the parting is not just, um, okay, we've had our party, now let's all go back to our own houses and we'll probably see each other this weekend or something. It's, no, we've been through this adventure together, and we're going to be, probably never see each other again. We'll keep our memories, but it's unlikely that we'll ever meet again. And so I was trying to think of, like, what is the meaning or significance of this? Because after looking through all these games, it definitely seems like this is a theme that has appeared in multiple games. And some of them, again, like Four Swords, might have been a little bit of a stretch, saying that, the four links becoming one is that, but it appears in enough games that I would argue that even if some people can argue a specific game that it doesn't apply, it still seems to be a theme throughout the series. And so one of the things I came up with is, there's a Japanese phrase called mono no aware, that is basically the concept of, things change, nothing stays the same. Ironically, somewhat ironic given my choice of the words permanence in regards to the separation, mono no aware is often referred to as like the pathos, or the feeling of impermanence, because things change, things develop, and it's somewhat, on the one hand, it's often related to feeling sad and realizing that, everything passes away in time, but it also has with it the idea of enjoying the beauty, of things while they're still here. That, you uh, you see the flower, and you know that the flower will eventually wither and die, and there's a sadness to that, but there's also that helps you appreciate the beauty of it right now even more, because right now you get to see it while it's still alive and beautiful. um, I don't know if that's, I haven't seen anything from the developers saying that this is what they were thinking of or anything, but it does seem to kind of fit with these of, um, you know, we're kind of mixing the sadness with the joy and beauty of the moment. You could even view this, if we look at Link's role, and the reason Link is called Link is because he's a link between the game and the player. You could even view this as sort of fitting in with that of um, the people in a game. Most of the people in the game get to enjoy the spoils of their victory, and they'll get to enjoy the peaceful times. You as the player, like the game's over for you. And just as with Link, like no, you're going to be moving on to some other adventure. Either you're going to replay the game again, or you're going to go play some other game. You rarely do you have a game where you play the game and then once you save the world, you get to just live peacefully in that world. That's usually when the game ends for the player. And so I wonder if that could also be another part of this, is just kind of because of Link's connection to the player. It's like, okay, yep, we need to get Link out of here because that's just not his purpose. There's just some things to think about there. And I will say, I deliberately chose this image from Link to the Past, and the Master Sword sleeps again forever. Precisely because of what I said earlier, that knowing that Fi is the Master Sword adds a whole new element of emotion to this scene. In the game, it's just like, hey, we had this really cool sword, and now that we're done, we can put it away. Job well done. Good job, Link. After playing Skyward Sword and thinking the Master Sword is Fi, it just adds a whole nother level of like, oh, we're briefly, getting to use Fi again, even if she wasn't alert and speaking with us. But now it's time for her to sleep again forever, or at least until the next time evil calls. Which also I think is kind of interesting in that A Link to the Past was one of the games we mentioned at the beginning that didn't seem to have this this parting theme, but now, because of what we understand about Fi and the Master Sword, going back and playing it, it suddenly gains a parting theme that it did not have initially. So it's kind of an interesting. I don't even think that. I doubt that was even an intentional retcon. It's just how the context works now. So I do think, like I said, there's room for discussion of whether this game or that game specifically fit this theme, but it does seem to appear enough that it seems to be one of the themes they're going with in the game, or in the series, of trying not to have it just be a pure fairy tale ending, and wanting to add at least a little bit of a bittersweet element to it. Again, not so much in some of the games where it's just Link's off on another adventure, but there's still just a little tinge of sadness. Things are going to change. Things are not going to. We're not going to stay the same and just stay here forever. And so, as we move forward onto some of the other games, we will take a look at that as well. As of this recording, just a little bit of a spoiler, the next game of the series, A Link Between Worlds, I had already finished playing that, and I did not include this in the post game for that. So when we get to the game after that, I'll be sure to include a section on A Link Between Worlds as well, specifically in how it relates to this theme. So won't go into that right now for anybody who's watching these in numerical order, but just realize that we will get to that eventually. All right. And so with that, there's just a couple more. That was the parting theme. There's a couple more things I did want to go over that I've been thinking about. One is Demise himself. I try to think. I don't think we really delve too deeply into Demise. Not going to delve very deeply into him right now, but I did want to go over a little bit of my thoughts. So Demise's final speech at the end of the game, the end of Skyward Sword, extraordinary. You stand as a paragon of your kind, human. You fight like no man or demon I have ever known. Though this is not the end. My hate never perishes. It is born anew in a cycle with no end. I will rise again. Those like you, those who share the blood of the goddess and the spirit of the hero, they are eternally bound to this curse. An incarnation of my hatred shall ever follow your kind, dooming them to wander a blood-soaked sea of darkness for all time. So, with those are Demise's parting words after we defeat him. And I know we mentioned the idea of this curse, and specifically we were looking at the cycle, and the fact how that recontextualizes the games and shows a lot of the kind of similarities. But one of the things I was kind of curious, and I looked at, and I don't have an answer for this. I think this is just some speculation I was thinking about. They are eternally bound to this curse. What exactly is the curse that he's referring to? It could be the part that, like, they are eternally bound to this curse, an incarnation of my hatred shall ever follow your kind, dooming them to wander a blood-soaked sea of darkness for all time. Like, it could be that's the curse, and he's saying, this is the curse that I eternally bind you to. Like, right now, he's cursing them. But there is also another reading of this. I note that he says he does say that Link fights like no man or demon he's ever known. So, he hasn't fought anyone like Link before. But he says this is not the end. My hate never perishes. It is born anew in a cycle with no end. I will rise again. So he doesn't say that my hate will never perish. It will be born anew. It never perishes. This is something that already, like, it is already in this state. The cycle with no end, like, it could already be part of this cycle. And indeed, we have some indication of this in that the whole reason Demise is here, he had arisen before and been struck down and sealed, and that's why he was the imprisoned until he was released. And so it's possible, could that be the curse he's talking about? That, like, the fact that he's that this is a cycle with no end, like, and maybe in which case, if we view that as the curse, and we view that as stuff that already has happened and will continue to happen, then it's possible that instead of him laying a new curse on Link and Zelda, he could just be revealing to them, like, hey, the whole reason you were caught up in this right now in this game was because you, those with the blood of the goddess and the spirit of the hero have been cursed, and this is just a new iteration of the curse. And so really it just raises the question of, is Skyward Sword the beginning of the cycle? Like, is this where things start, that this is the first time that we have Demise's hatred, the goddess's blood, and the hero's spirit all together, and then from this point on they will be bound together, or is Skyward Sword itself just another iteration of the cycle? And I don't think we have an answer for that. I think we don't have any indication of anything before this, other than just the vague fight between Hylia and Demise. Which, was there a hero involved there? Apparently, if there was, he didn't fight as well as Link did, just based on Demise's statement here. But there's no indication that like every time the hero arises that he's going to be identical. And before, Hylia was also much more powerful, so it could have made sense to that she was shouldering more of the burden that time. And it just makes it's something I don't think we can really answer until like maybe Nintendo will make another game that could take place before Skyward Sword, and maybe we will see an answer to this, or it could just be that we have to accept that there is no answer at the moment. But we'll keep an eye out in case anything arises. But then another thing that stands out is an incarnation of my hatred shall ever follow your kind. And what is meant by an incarnation of my hatred? Now, first of all, I think the obvious answer is Ganondorf. Ganondorf, they're a little small, so it might not be very easy to see, but there is a physical resemblance. Demise has like the fiery hair. Ganondorf has usually has reddish hair. They're both swordsmen. They both have the very bulky. This is Ganondorf specifically in his Twilight Princess design, and so he's got sword. Demise has got a sword. They both wear kind of like the heavy armor look. And so there's physical there's the physical similarities, and then of course the fact that Ganondorf just keeps coming back, keeps pretty much causing the blood-soaked Sea of Darkness for Link and Zelda anytime he appears. Suddenly that phrase blood-soaked Sea of Darkness suddenly puts me in mind of in Zelda 2 when we reach the cemetery and there's just like innumerable headstones that are like filling up half a continent. That would probably have to come from some kind of a blood-soaked Sea of Darkness, imagine. So I don't think there's any question that Ganondorf is a fulfillment of an incarnation of Demise's hatred. And interesting that Demise doesn't say like my incarnation or anything. It's an incarnation of his hatred specifically. That his hatred is what will live on, whether he does or not. But there is a question, and there is some speculation of, well, what about the other villains that we've seen in the series? I didn't include the nightmares on here. I thought about it, but I didn't include the Thunderbird because the Thunderbird and Shadow Link are tests for Link. They're not they're not really villains born from Demise. I didn't include the nightmares from Link's Awakening because I think that mainly because Zelda's not involved in that game, and the nightmares seem to be going after the Windfish. Link seems to be an afterthought for them. They don't even realize Link's there until he shows up. So I don't think that the nightmares are born from hatred of the blood of the goddess and the spirit of the hero. I think they're just some other entity causing trouble. So the ones that I thought could at least potentially be that we should at least think about are Majora, Vadi, Bellum, and Malladus. Majora from Majora's Mask. The mask itself seems to be when people wear it. Like when Skull Kid's wearing it, it caused him to. It gave him power, but also seemed to make him kind of take control of him, make him do things that he might not have done otherwise. We have Vadi, of course, from the Four Sword and Minish Cap games. He does seem to. He's also being a evil. He does certainly fit with the sorcerer idea of Ganon, Ganondorf being a sorcerer, especially in the earlier games. Even in the later games, he has quite a bit of magic. Body kind of fits in that role, although not as much a physical fighter. Sorry, let me go through these, then we'll we'll examine their fitness. Bellum, the main villain from Phantom Hourglass, is the kind of squid-looking one here with all the eyes around him on his tentacles and body and everything. And Maladus from the Spirit Tracks, he was the one that was it Minister Cole. Minister Cole was like a lesser demon trying to free Maladus and ensure that Maladus could return and rule again. So now kind of for some connections and some fitness of each of these characters. First of all, I would point out that both Demise and Ganondorf are referred to as the Demon King, which seems rather important connection, and rather fitting that if Ganondorf is an incarnation of Demise's hatred, it makes sense that he might similarly inherit some of the titles. Let's see. We'll start with Majora. Majora, I think, does not fit as. I just realized that Majora also doesn't have Zelda in it, but Majora, I think, in addition to not having Zelda involved, I don't think Majora really fits as an incarnation of Demise. For one thing, Majora, the mask is something that the Happy Mask Salesman has had on him for some time and has been specifically holding on to it, keeping to protect it or protect people from it, because he knows it has an evil spirit in it, and so he's been like keeping it, making sure that it doesn't get out and cause trouble. That doesn't sound like Spirit of Demise. That sounds like some other maybe mischievous spirit, whether it's demonic or some other powerful sorcerer did something we don't really know. I think it might have been referred to as a demon at one point, but it doesn't sound like it's Demise. And I've also seen it pointed out that Demise and Ganondorf, their thing seems to be power and wanting to conquer. Majora just wants to destroy. The imp doesn't seem like he's trying to conquer anything. He doesn't seem like he's trying to force everybody to obey him or anything. He's just like, initially he's causing pranks, and that quickly escalates to stuff that's destroying people's lives and messing with livelihoods. And then he's like, "Oh, I've got an idea. Let me just drop the moon on all of Termina." There doesn't seem to be any planning here. There doesn't seem to be any. You could say there's hatred. That's a similarity, but there doesn't seem to be any. He doesn't seem to have the forethought, I think, that we see certainly with Ganondorf, and even to a certain extent with Demise. So I think Majora, I'm pretty comfortable saying, is a different entity. Vadi be an interesting one. On the one hand, one of the arguments against it would be that Vadi and Ganondorf we know exist at the same time in Four Sword Adventures. Also, Vadi is sealed away in the Four Sword, presumably with some overlap of time with periods of time when Ganondorf is out. But on the other hand, Demise does say that calls it an incarnation of his hatred. not necessarily his incarnation. So then, could there be multiple incarnations of his hatred? It's possible. Vadi also does, similar to Ganondorf. He transforms. Um, he has his sorcerer phase, and then he transforms into a much more beast-like mode. He has mainly his giant eyeball with arms. Come to think of it, is a lot like one of the nightmares in one of the forms of the final nightmare in Link's Awakening. But there's other explanations for that with the nightmares. And Vadi does certainly fit with the. His thing is he steals the hat that Eslo had created that had the power, so that he could get, so he could work his way into Hyrule Castle and be looking for the Triforce, for the divine, the light force. I think they called it something different there. Like, there's definitely similarities between between Vadi and Ganondorf, certainly. I'm trying to think. On the one hand, I'm tempted to say that Vadi seems too focused on the power aspect and not enough on the hatred of others. But on the other hand, Ganondorf, depending on the game, has also been focused more on the power aspect as well. So there's less physical similarity between Vadi and Demise. He's definitely more of the scrawny mage archetype, not the huge sword wielder. But then he does have his beast form that does show physical power. So, or his monstrous form does show physical power. So, I'm tempted to say no on Vadi, just because mainly the overlap with Ganondorf being out at the same time, and the fact that we see from Majora that there is a precedent for other evil forms to be out. I think Majora sets the precedent that not all evil has to come from Demise. Demise is not like the source of evil. He's just the one who's responsible for this particular one particular style of evil. So I think I'm going to say Vadi, probably not. So next we have Bellum. Bellum is on the one hand, Bellum is fighting against both Zelda and Link. See a lot of controlling going on with Bellum. I feel like Bellum. So we have like the ghost ship enticing people in, and then it's just kind of like fairy space that where time seems work weirdly. It's a very different style, I think, than Ganondorf and Demise. And even though we see him trap Zelda and Link, or he's going after them, I'm not sure that it's so much vengeance against them. His goal seems to be more focused on the Ocean King and trying to get the Ocean King out of the way and maybe like usurping his position. So I think Bellum, I'm also going to say, is probably not an incarnation of Demise. Also, this may be coincidental. I don't think there's enough to say there's a huge connection there. But when we're looking at physical similarities, the eyes that Bellum has are very similar to Majora's, or at least the eyes in Majora's Mask. I don't see enough other similarities between Majora and Bellum to say that there's a connection there, like Bellum is the reincarnated version of Majora or anything. But it does make me wonder if there could be a connection. I mean, we did see Majora make monsters out of the giants in Majora's Mask. Could Majora have been responsible for creating Bellum? Even I don't know. It might be some speculation for another time. For now, Bellum, I don't think is Demise. So then we have Malladus. Malladus, what do we know about him? Well, we know he's part train, or at least has a train that seems to have a demonic form for him. Let's see, what was it? He came about because Minister Cole was working to bring about his revival. He had been sealed away by the spirit tracks long ago. So immediately we do have a similar issue to Vadi in that if Malladus was sealed away long ago by the spirit tracks, unless long ago was just a couple generations, like 100 years ago, because we know that Nico is still alive in spirit tracks. So he might be very, very old. He might even be over 100, but we know that spirit tracks is probably a century or less after Wind Waker. And in Wind Waker we had Ganondorf. So if Malladus is an incarnation as well, it seems like he would have been sealed away and been under the seal of these tracks at the same time that Ganondorf was out running around. So again, as we've said before, that's not necessarily impossible. There could be more than one incarnation operating, but that was one of the things that kind of spoke against Vadi, and so I think it has to speak against Malladus here. On the other hand, one of the things that might speak for Malladus is I don't know if it's his Japanese name or just another name that they gave him in one of the Hyrule encyclopedias, but he is called the Demon King, and so that is a name that's shared with Demise and Ganondorf. Granted, it's also a fairly generic, evil-sounding name, so it's not the strongest evidence. And we do even see a little bit of similarity. Malladus has this kind of bluish, greenish skin to him. Ganondorf has green skin. Malladus has kind of the orange hair going on. I think this might be he was merging with Cole and then became a giant beast. So this isn't necessarily strictly his true form, but it does bear some resemblance to Ganondorf in some of his beast forms. So I definitely see some similarities there. The fact that he was bound and sealed away, while Ganondorf has been running around doing stuff, to me makes me think that he's probably not one of the incarnations. But I will say I think he's probably our strongest non-Ganondorf candidate so far. So, and unfortunately, that's one of the things with the Zelda games is that they're not usually hugely focused on trying to have a single coherent story across multiple games. So it's possible that will just remain a mystery forever, similar to whether Skyward Sword is the beginning of the cycle or not. One of the things I did want to make sure to mention while we're thinking about it is with Ganondorf specifically, whether Demise has multiple incarnations, whether he just has the one in Ganondorf, it does seem like Ganondorf became the big winner here. Remember how did we defeat Demise? We ended up having to power up Fi as the Master Sword with blessings from all three of the goddesses, from Din, from Nehru, and from Varor. And so we have the power of all three against Demise. Where else do we see the power of all three? So the power of all three is in the Master Sword, but we also see the power of all three of them in the Triforce. And Ganondorf managed to obtain the Triforce. When he got to the Triforce, his heart was not in balance. He was just focused on the power. So he became champion of power, and wisdom and courage went to say, like, if somebody who's unworthy achieves the Triforce, they'll only get the piece that they most strongly desire, and the other two apparently just go out to find their own champions, or the goddesses choose a champion for each of them or something. Because Ganondorf obtained his piece of power, Link and Zelda just seemed like they were kind of chosen. Zelda, I guess, being part of the royal family, that's probably just by default. But Link, he just seemed to wake up, realize he had a triangle on the back of his hand, and like, oh, okay, I'm a hero now. But by getting the Triforce of power, even without obtaining the whole Triforce, Ganondorf as Demise's incarnation of Demise's hatred, is kind of an instrument of Demise, is now able to wield part of the goddess's power against them. And it's interesting that Ganondorf should be the one to obtain the Triforce. It kind of goes back to feeling that Demise and Ganondorf plan a bit more than, say, Majora. I wonder how far out this was planned by Demise, of like, okay, when my hatred is incarnated in this Gerudo, who incidentally we're also told that a Gerudo male is only born once every 100 years, and it's like he's immediately made king of the Gerudo when it happens because it's such a big deal. Are the Gerudo themselves part of Demise's plan? Is that something is that part of the cycle with no end, that like, hey, I'm going to keep on, anytime there's a Gerudo male, that's going to be my vessel for for attacking Hyrule. And trying to go after blood of the goddess because that's the royal family of Hyrule and the spirit of the hero who's probably born in Hyrule. It would make it a little bit more interesting. The male only being born every 100 years if male is always evil. Although the Gerudo as a race don't seem like they're strictly evil, and they've gotten less so, over the years. You'd think they would kind of pick up on it if like, hey, every time we get a boy, he kind of leads us into evil and darkness. Maybe we should do something about that. But yeah, the fact that Ganondorf specifically was born to the Gerudo led them against Hyrule in some versions, or like he tricked Hyrule in Ocarina of Time, which is probably the most full version that we have. But at some point, he obtained the Triforce and got the Triforce of Power, and he still wants to collect all 3 of the Triforce pieces, because that's the ultimate bit. But just with that, I think that could have been Demise deliberately trying to even the score of like, okay, if I can even get part of the Triforce, even one piece of the Triforce, well, now it's 1 piece versus 2 pieces instead of 0 versus 3. So I think it'll be interesting going forward. We'll see if in future games, if there's anything more we can learn about Demise, if we see anything else we can learn about this that might tie back in. I think for now, my conclusion is that Ganondorf is the only one that we can confirm is an incarnation of hatred of Demise. But there's no saying that Vadi and Maladus are possibilities, and we also don't know that the incarnation of Demise's hatred always has to be a person. It could be that maybe he expresses that hatred in other ways and helped power up Majora, or we'll see if things come back to Demise at some point. So, thinking of the Triforce, however, is the last thing I want to talk about is what do we learn about the nature of the Triforce? And again, the fact that we have all 3 of the pieces, I guess this isn't just the Triforce, this is also just about the goddesses in general. But we have power, wisdom, and courage. All 3 of those were used to power up Fi. That we needed the blessings of Din, Nehru, and Floor. And so power, the power portion of the Triforce we often associate with evil because that's Ganondorf's piece, and Ganondorf is definitely evil. But power is not inherently evil itself. The power bit of the Triforce is not inherently evil. Din is not some rebellious goddess who turned against the other 2. We don't have like a Slytherin kind of situation where Din turned against the other 2 and decided to do things on her own. Like we've met Din as an oracle, or an oracle of Din, how that would work out, and she was perfectly fine, helped us out, and we've had Din help us out in other games. In Wind Waker, we had to get kind of we had to collect the pearls of the 3 goddesses, awaken their statues. Presumably there was some kind of a blessing or guidance going on there that definitely seemed rather magical. So we see all 3 of the goddesses took part in creating the Triforce, and all 3 of the goddesses continue to assist us. We're again, it is not the case that Din decided that she was going to turn against the other two or anything. This isn't some kind of infighting between the three. It does make me wonder a little bit when we see the way that, as we mentioned, when Ganondorf took the Triforce, the other two were chosen. The fact that, going back, the ones chosen happen to be one with the blood of the goddess. Regardless of what game it is, Triforce of Wisdom always seems to go to a Zelda, part of the royal family, someone who has the blood of the goddess, and the spirit of the hero. Courage always seems to go to the spirit of the hero. Now, maybe it's, spirit of the hero could be more vague in that, like, well, anybody who's heroic and courageous could have the spirit of the hero. The way Demise is speaking here, it sounds like that's more of a, like, the spirit of the hero is more of a specific thing that he's referring to. Just as the blood of the goddess, he's specifically referring to descendants of Hylia. And I think the similarities that we see among links can probably be attributed to all of them having the spirit of the hero, even if they're not directly related to each other. So if the Triforce of Courage always picks, somebody with this particular spirit, and the Triforce of Wisdom always picks, a Princess Zelda, Ganondorf was the one who encountered the Triforce and thus got power. It wasn't that he was sought out when someone else got the Triforce, but it does make me wonder, like, is there some sense that Ganondorf was chosen for power? Like, was this almost an inevitability? I don't think this was necessarily chosen by Din, although the fact that Din does seem connected to the Gerudo, when we see her, when you see Din the Oracle, she has some very, she has the darker skin and red hair of the Gerudo. If the male being born every 100 years isn't the result of Demise's curse, if it's not like Demise making it that, like, okay, every male that's born is going to be the instrument of my hatred, could that be something of Din's doing? Could Din be like, hey, I'm gonna make sure that every time a male is born, he's he's kind of the one marked for the Triforce of power if it's needed. In the same way that Princess Zelda's, not every Princess Zelda I think has the Triforce of power, but or Triforce of Wisdom. But whenever the Triforce of Wisdom is needed, it goes to a Princess Zelda. If that's the case, if Din has, like, selected, had basically made it so, like, okay, yeah, the my chosen champion is going to be the male Gerudo that's born every 100 years or something, and we do have some connections. We do have some other connections between the Gerudo and Din. I believe, I think it might be explicitly stated somewhere, or at least hinted at, that in Ocarina of Time, when we visit the temple in the desert, there's a giant statue of a woman. Actually, I think there's two. There's, like, one on the outside carved in the rock, and there's one inside in one of the halls. And I believe that's hinted at or stated somewhere to actually be Din, that the Gerudo are worshiping Din specifically, strengthening her connection to them. And so, I think that might be, if that were the case, that Din was the one who set up or established the idea of the male being born once every 100 years to be the leader of the Gerudo, and is also, if she kind of had him selected as, like, okay, yeah, if the Triforce is needed, If there's ever someone who needs to get the Triforce of Power, that's my chosen champion. Then that could make sense for doubly so for Demise, kind of making one of those heirs his incarnation, in that he would not only then be like, okay, now this guy will be able to go get the Triforce of Power for me and take that, but he would also be using using a line, like basically using Din's plan against her. I don't know, it's definitely very speculation based. Don't want to get too much. Don't want to say too definitively that is what happened, but that I think that definitely fits. That's definitely a possibility. Again, hopefully we'll get to see more with the Gerudo and their relationship with Ganondorf and the goddesses and Hylians later. Be nice to see more of those. But that was a bit of a rabbit hole, wondering if Ganondorf could have in some way been chosen. Not that I think that Din wanted someone evil to be to get her Triforce, but that if she had, the idea would be that if she had set this up, it would be like, okay, yeah, my champion kind of defaults to the male leader of the Gerudo, and Demise ended up, making one of those male leaders his incarnation, and so he was able to kind of use that. Maybe that even helped Ganondorf become the one to finally get to the Triforce when everybody was, no one else had really managed to do it at that point. So, one of the things I do notice is the power, the wisdom, the courage. It seems to be based on what the champions. I'm just going to refer to those who hold the Triforce, or who obtain the Triforce as the champions. It does seem to be based on what they value, not necessarily their ability. When Ganondorf gets the Triforce of Power, it's not because like he only has power and not wisdom or courage. It's like that's what he desires. That's what he focuses. That's the whole reason he wants the Triforce. He wants power. And I mean, we've seen Zelda can have courage. Zelda can have power, but wisdom as a leader seems to be what she's focused on. Link, we've seen astonishing lack of wisdom from him at times, lack of power, never really a lack of courage. But I think as an adventurer and as somebody, he always seems to be an adventurer and one who travels around a lot. It seems to be like courage is something he values. In that way, once again, we're kind of bringing Harry Potter into it. So that way, it seems kind of like the Sorting Hat, that the Sorting Hat doesn't sort into houses just based on like just based on what your ability is, but also on like what you yourself value. And that's like why Hermione is a Gryffindor, not a Ravenclaw, because even though she's very smart, she, also still both exhibits and seems to value like the bravery and the Gryffindor aspects. So I think that's similar to how the Triforce is working when it's choosing which Triforce someone gets who's not in balance. Then finally, I wanted to say about the Triforce. One of the things that's interesting. This is the Triforce has been around from the very first game. The Triforce of Wisdom and Triforce of Power were in the very first game. Ganondorf already had the Triforce of Power. Triforce of Wisdom was the magical MacGuffin that he wanted to invade Hyrule to get. And they've shown up repeatedly since then. Triforce of Courage was added with Zelda 2, and since then they've kind of become a set. And But you had a lot more lore, a lot more information about them. What's interesting is we hear that the Triforces was like what's left was left after the goddesses created the world. And so it has their power. It can be um, it as far as we've seen with some of the wishes, like we have not really seen any limits on what it can do. Um, like the limits just seem to be whatever whatever the people who control it want. Um, but it's interesting that the Triforce, uh, we do have chosen champions, specifically with Zelda and Link, but the Triforce can respond to evil hearts as well as good. It's not just limited to who the goddesses want, and it's not the main tool that the goddesses use to achieve victory. We have to collect the Triforce pieces. We use the Triforce to help power up, uh, to help power up Link and Zelda, but we don't really tend to use the Triforce to defeat the boss, at least not directly. Rather, it's maybe our sword will be blessed, and we have like Zelda with the light arrows helping us out, and we'll go through all this. Then once we beat the boss, then the Triforce comes into play of like in Wind Waker, like okay, beat Ganondorf, and then like we have the Triforce, drowning Hyrule and return and basically ending old Hyrule. It's not that we're using the Triforce to stop Ganondorf. We're still responsible for stopping Ganondorf. The Triforce is just used to basically clean things up afterwards. In A Link to the Past, we don't use the Triforce to stop Ganon. We have to stop Ganon first, then we can get the Triforce and use that to restore everything. So it went from the Triforce went from being just like the objective of the bad guy to being a tool that is used quite a bit in the series, from what we've seen. Not every game, and not even most games, but we do see it used several times. And yet it's used after we already have victory. We achieve the victory. We have our pieces of the Triforce. The Link has courage, Zelda has the wisdom. They have their pieces, but the full power of the Triforce and all three pieces is used after victory's been achieved to just kind of clean things up and set some things in order. So I think with the reason I was thinking of this here is I was really reminded of this because of thinking of Fee and the powering up with the goddesses and the blessings of the goddesses, and Demise getting his, basically getting the piece of power to work on his side. Really just kind of makes me think about what exactly Triforce is and what we're doing with it. And with that, I think hopefully we've had some fun thinking about this. I don't I know we haven't probably raised as many questions as we had answers, or even more. But we'll try to keep an eye on some of this, at least in future games as well, and see if we can get any more information in some of them. And again, you won't see this in in the post game for a Link Between Worlds, because that's already happened at this point, real life. But we'll might examine that after the following game. We might have a Link Between Worlds section, or we'll have a Link Between Worlds section for at least some of this, and we'll see how much of this applies to that as well. So, with that, thank you for joining me. Have a good week, and I will see you next time. Bye.